She sits in the soft glow of a late afternoon sunbeam, her home in Malibu quiet except for the distant hush of surf. Barbra Streisand at 83 finally leans forward, eyes reflecting decades of triumph and heartache, and speaks the words fans have longed to hear. Robert was the only one who could do that to me. Tonight, she will reveal the hidden truth about Robert Redford, her co-star, confident, and once buried secret collaborator whose influence shaped her both on screen and in life. It was 1973 when Streisand and Redford first crossed paths on the set of The Way We Were. She remembers the moment she saw him stride through the studio gates, sunlight catching his wind-tousled hair, the world pausing as he offered her that easy smile. From their first table read, their chemistry ignited the camera's Rachel's fierce idealism meeting Hubble's cool detachment, their voices weaving in perfect tension. Audiences swooned at the pairing, unaware that behind the scenes, their bond ran deeper than any script suggested. During a pivotal scene, when Rachel's tears blurred into heartbreak, Streisand found herself inches from Redford's steady gaze. In that raw exchange, he did something no other actor had ever done. He broke her guard. With a simple tilt of his head, he coaxed a tremor in her voice that turned scripted sorrow into lived grief. She stumbled through her lines, and director Sidney Pollack held the take, knowing they'd captured unfiltered truth. He was the only one who could make me feel that exposed. She confesses now, voice soft yet unwavering. Off camera, their friendship was a tapestry of shared confidences and mutual respect. Redford introduced her to his favorite jazz bars, where hushed saxophone notes echoed their unspoken bond. Streisand, in turn, invited him into her world of song, teaching him to hold a note until it trembled with emotion. Late nights found them at her piano, harmonizing on standards that felt simultaneously familiar and new. Each melody they created whispered of trust, a two-way street of vulnerability neither had traversed before. Their collaboration resumed in 1996 on Up, Close and Personal, nearly a quarter-century later. Streisand arrived on set carrying scars from career battles. Redford, recovering from personal loss, approached each day with steady resolve. In a scene where their characters navigate heartbreak and redemption, Redford stepped off camera and offered Streisand a single note of encouragement. "Speak your truth." She did, and cameras rolled over a performance filled with autobiographical depth. Critics hailed it as her most mature work, but only she knew whose quiet exhortation had made it possible. Yet even as their artistry flourished, Streisand kept their personal alliance largely private. In interviews, she deflected questions with practiced humor, preserving a boundary drawn by discretion. Only close friends sensed the special language between them. Glances that lingered too long, laughter that carried private undertones. "He respected my walls," Streisand says now, but he knew exactly which door to open. That door led to revelations about her own limits and strengths, lessons she would carry into every role thereafter. Tonight's confessions extend beyond admiration. Streisand reveals that Redford was her secret sounding board during the making of her directorial debut, Yentl, in 1983. Facing studio pressure to cast a younger leading man, she hesitated. Redford, a rising mogul behind the camera as well, picked up the phone and challenged her conviction. "Don't bend your vision for comfort." His words emboldened her, and Yentl became a landmark film about female agency. Without that call, she believed she might have surrendered to compromise. "He was the only one who could do that to me," she reflects, "and save my dream." Now, as the sun dips below the Pacific horizon, Streisand prepares to share rare letters Redford once penned, notes discovered in an old manuscript box, addressed simply to Barbra, with faith. In them, he anticipates her doubts and speaks of courage in quiet ink. Releasing these letters feels like laying her soul bare, yet she trusts his integrity more than any staged performance. Because in a career built on spotlight and song, the most profound revelation is this secret harmony. Robert Redford, the only one who could bring her truth to light. They first met on a night off in 1973, after The Way We Were wrapped its final scene. Barbra invited Robert to a private screening in her Westwood screening room, expecting polite gratitude. Instead, Redford surprised her by pausing the film at the moment Rachel's voice cracked on camera. He turned, eyes earnest, and said, "Barbra, you hid something there. Fear, pain, truth. Let it live." His words pierced her instincts to polish every syllable. "He was the only one who could do that to me," Barbra now admits, "and I've chased that moment ever since." From then on, whenever she sensed artifice in her own performance, she heard his promptee, "Find what you were trying to bury." In 1975, Barbra faced a career crossroads after her ambitious concert tour faltered under punishing schedules and critical ambivalence. Frustrated, she considered stepping back. That spring, Redford invited her to his Aspen home for a long weekend of skiing and quiet conversation. Far from Hollywood's glare, he challenged her to reimagine her artistry. "You're not just a voice," he told her over a crackling fireplace. "You're a storyteller." He handed her an old typewriter and urged her to write down memories, from her childhood in Brooklyn to first heartbreak. The next morning, she awoke to find a heartfelt letter he'd composed in return, reminding her that the raw materials of lived experience were her greatest asset. That handwritten note sits in her archives today, a testament to his rare ability to help her reclaim her narrative. Their collaboration deepened during Barbra's 1983 directorial debut, Yentl. Studio executives balked at her dual role as star and director. Doubt gnawed at her could she carry the $14 million budget. Late one evening, she phoned Redford in New York. He answered on the third ring, an invitation in itself. "Barbra," he said, "you didn't survive showbiz this long by playing small. Trust your vision." He flew to Los Angeles at his own expense, quietly observing rushes in her editing suite. At a critical juncture, when Yentl must choose between love and independence, he looked at her monitor and whispered, "Lean into the silence before the gunshot. Your heart will speak." That moment, and his unwavering faith, propelled her to complete a film considered a breakthrough in female-driven cinema. Beyond set and screen, Redford's counsel extended into Barbra's personal life. In 1987, after a courtroom battle over custody of her son Jason, she withdrew from public view, unsure how to balance motherhood with her career. Redford invited her to Utah for a trout unlimited fishing retreat, insisting on a digital break. As they cast lines into crystal streams, he shared his own struggles raising children between film shoots. "You'll find strength in stillness," he reminded her, handing her a rod. When she finally pulled in a trout, she heard his laughter in the wind, a reminder that life's victories often come unheralded. That retreat became the foundation of her resolve to protect her family while continuing to perform. In 1995, Barbra launched her first Broadway production, The Mirror Has Two Faces. Convinced to star in and produce the show, she felt the weight of financial risk. During previews, critics whispered it lacked dramatic tension. Desperate, she confided in Redford, who flew in from Sundance, traded his tuxedo for a simple T-shirt, and sat in the third row each night. After a faltering opening, he strode onstage with her in the empty theater at daybreak, walking her through emotional beats. He urged her to embrace vulnerability over veneer. On opening night, her performance resonated with newfound depth, earning Tony nominations. "He was the only one who could do that to me," Barbra reflects, pushing me to dig under every lyric and line. Their partnership also fostered civic engagement. In the early 2000s, Barbra turned her attention to environmental causes. Redford, founder of Sundance Institute, invited her to headline the inaugural Sundance Green Gala in 2004. When she hesitated, unsure how her voice fit the conversation, Redford pulled her aside, saying, "Your spotlight can illuminate truth beyond film. Use it." He introduced her onstage to climate scientists, and she delivered an impassioned plea that raised over $2 million for renewable energy research. His belief in her power to move hearts and minds by speaking up for causes shaped her role as a public citizen as much as any artistic choice. In 2010, during filming of her TV special My Name is Barbra, Barbra found herself trapped between nostalgia for past glory and the demands of reinvention. She invited Redford to address rehearsal in Culver City. He arrived unannounced, blending into the audience of dancers and musicians. As she fumbled a high note, he stood and shouted, "Sing for yourself, not their memories!" Cameras captured her head whipping toward the audience. She inhaled deeply and soared through the next passage. That live-to-tape take became the special's climactic moment, a raw reminder of her enduring voice and the singular man who coached her to reclaim it. These intertwined stories, spanning over 4 decades, reveal why Barbra Streisand confesses at 83 that Robert Redford was the only man who could break through her armor, illuminate her vulnerabilities, and propel her artistry. His rare gift for prompting truth transformed her career and her life, time and again. As she prepares to share unpublished letters and never before heard anecdotes, she honors the friend, ally, and creative catalyst who understood her better than anyone. Because in a lifetime of standing in the spotlight, the most profound light was cast by Robert Redford, her secret guardian of authenticity, the only one who could do that to her. By the late 1970s, Barbra found herself navigating both personal upheavals and professional challenges, and Robert was the only one she dared to lean on. After Yentl screened at Telluride in 1983, she sat in a Mountain Lodge theater trembling with nerves about its reception. Redford slipped into the dark row behind her and murmured, "Let their applause be your guide, not your jailer." She turned, stunned at his gentle irony, and realized he understood how crucial it was for her to hear honest encouragement, even when her heart hammered with fear. Their next transformative moment came during the tumultuous production of The Prince of Tides in 1991. Barbra had signed on to play Savannah Temple, a role drenched in Southern secrets and family trauma, but she felt adrift in the sprawling South Carolina setting. Scripts lay heavy with grief, and she could not find Savannah's voice. One afternoon, Redford arrived unannounced on the marsh-lined set, wearing faded jeans and a weathered fishing hat. He took her hand, led her to a deserted dock, and challenged her to speak Savannah's darkest longing into the wind. As her voice quivered across the water, he stood silently by, letting her inhabit the character's pain without interruption. When she fell silent, he gently prompted her to inhabit the empty space between words. In that hush, she discovered Savannah's heartbeat and returned to set with renewed purpose, his confidence igniting her creative spark. On Broadway in 1994, Barbra tackled "Hello, Dolly!" determined to conquer the stage before a live audience. Rehearsals were brutal choreography that left her breathless, lines that flattened her bravado. She feared the musical triumph would elude her, that critics would pounce on the star who sought to remake a classic. Midway through previews, Redford showed up at the theater's wings, carrying a battered music stand and a copy of the Fanny Brice biography. He whispered, "Trust the moment, Babs. Dolly lives in your laughter." He then coached her on a Johnny step, dragging his feet in an exaggerated syncopation, until she finally laughed so fully that her every misstep felt like a celebration. The overnight ticket rush that followed proved that Barbra had captured Dolly not through perfection but through the joyous truth Redford had coaxed from her. In the swirl of award shows and media tours, Barbra remained fiercely private about her personal struggles, her 2 difficult pregnancies, her periodic anxieties about aging, and the persistent ache of a fiercely guarded heart. Redford, ever perceptive, sensed when she was faltering. On one rain-soaked press junket in Paris, she sat at a sidewalk cafe staring blankly at her espresso. Without fanfare, Redford slid into the seat opposite, placed his hand over hers, and said, "Don't let their questions drown out your own voice." He spent that afternoon walking her beneath ancient plane trees, helping her shake off the camera's glare. He framed each question she faced as a choice to speak her truth, not theirs, and she left Paris determined to reclaim her narrative. Their friendship deepened through decades of activism. In 2000, when Barbra launched the Streisand Foundation to protect coastal lands and marine wildlife, Redford counseled her on combining star power with grassroots organizing. He invited her to Mill Valley for a weekend retreat, gathering environmentalists, filmmakers, and Native American leaders around a crackling fire. At dawn, he handed her a camera and encouraged her to document the redwood canopy's delicate interplay with sunlight and shadow. That footage formed the opening montage of her foundation's first advocacy film, which galvanized funding and public interest. Barbra credits Redford's insistence on artful storytelling, splicing raw nature imagery with honest narration, for the foundation's success and its enduring impact. As the new millennium unfurled, Barbra embarked on a memoir unlike any she had considered, a candid account of her triumphs and vulnerabilities. The blank pages loomed daunting until Redford sent her weekly letters, each bearing a single word: brave, unflinch, own, release, and an anecdote from his own life's reckonings. In his calligraphy, she found permission to expose her inner world, her childhood love of Judy Garland, the sting of early studio betrayals, and the private tears she'd shed after a botched charity telethon. His words became chapter titles, guiding her through chapters she once thought too private to share. When the memoir topped bestseller lists, Barbra knew she owed its raw honesty to Robert's unwavering faith. In retirement, they found fresh adventures. In 2015, Barbra curated a lifetime tribute screening at the Telluride Film Festival. She surprised the audience by introducing Redford not as a co-star but as her creative conscience. Onstage under starlit mountains, she recounted every moment he disrupted her armor, on set, in rehearsal halls, and in the quietest corners of her mind. As she spoke, he sat among the audience beaming with pride. Their shared laughter and tears became the festival's most talked about highlight, proof that their bond transcended celebrity and had become a living testament to trust and truth. Now, at 83, Barbra sits by her Malibu window, a stack of Robert's old letters on her lap. She reflects on a career gilded with awards and ovations, yet knows that her most treasured accolades were his honest provocations. The single sentence delivered off camera that transformed a take, the unannounced visits that rekindled her courage, and the handwritten words that unlocked her soul. He was the only one who could do that to me, she repeats with quiet conviction. Because in a lifetime of standing beneath spotlights, the brightest illumination came from Robert Redford's unwavering belief in her truth. In the late 1990s, as my voice found new textures in adulthood, Robert re-emerged to guide me through uncharted artistic territory. In 1998, I embarked on Barbra Streisand, the concert, my first large-scale tour in over 20 years. The pressure was immense. I hadn't sung live before thousands in decades, and I was terrified of cracking under scrutiny. I called Robert from the rehearsal hall in Madison Square Garden. His response surprised me. He arrived 2 days later carrying an old Magnum, PI script, and a single folding chair. He set it center stage, gestured for me to sit, and sat beside me in silence. He said nothing until the final warm-up note faded. Then, he tapped the chair and whispered, "Place your trust in the music, not the stage." That simple ceremony grounded me. When opening night arrived, I felt a calm born of his steady presence. My performance that night, raw, truthful, unshielded, became the anchor for my subsequent encore production, and critics credited its emotional honesty to some indefinable spark. I know now that spark was Robert's gift. Our next chapter unfolded at Sundance in 2001, when I accepted the Sundance Institute's Humanitarian Award. Standing on the snowy Ortega stage, I began my speech and froze mid-line, overwhelmed by the wind and the weight of the moment. Robert, seated in the second row, winked at me. He mouthed, "Start again. Speak to them, not above them." I didn't know people listened for sincerity, not polish, until he taught me. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and spoke from the heart. The applause that followed felt less like praise and more like connection. In that instant, I understood why Robert had spent his life nurturing Sundance as a place where artists could risk failure. He wanted me to know that spilling truth on a snowy stage is braver than any spotlight in Hollywood. In 2003, I explored documentary filmmaking with Barbra Streisand, the concert film. Producers questioned my vision. Would audiences accept me in director's chair? Doubt gnawed at me. Robert sent a fax. Yes, a fax. In his elegant scrawl, quoting Thoreau, "Go confidently in the direction of your dreams." It arrived mid-shoot, taped to my bathroom mirror. Every time I hesitated, I reread that line and imagined Robert's steady gaze. I completed the film, capturing every note's nuance, and festival programmers hailed it as one of the truest concert documentaries ever made. His intervention had been more powerful than any pep talk. It was a reminder that vision demands conviction. Years later, when digital platforms began reshaping distribution, I hesitated to embrace streaming specials. Would my fans follow me online? Robert, ever the Renaissance spirit, called me with excitement about Point Break's streaming revival. He challenged me to see the opportunity. "Your voice can find new homes in living rooms and phones," he said. He flew into my studio and tested lighting with LED panels until I found angles that flattered age instead of hiding it. We shot an intimate specials series, Barbra Online, where I sang from my living room. Critics marveled at its warmth. Younger viewers discovered me for the first time. In every pixel, I trusted myself more, because Robert had teased out my willingness to adapt, not retreat. Our collaboration took a philanthropic turn in 2010, when I founded the Streisand Family Foundation's Arts Grant Program, looking to merge art and activism. I turned to Robert for counsel on creating meaningful residencies for young filmmakers. He flew to Malibu, sat in my garden under the rays of a midday sun, and sketched a blueprint on a cocktail napkin. Offer artists time, space, and true critique. He insisted on pairing grants with mentorship rather than just funding. We recruited seasoned directors to live alongside fellows for a month, guiding them through late-night edits and studio debates. That pilot program ignited dozens of independent careers, proving again that Robert's faith in unheralded voices sparked real change. In 2015, I launched my first charity concert dedicated to climate awareness. Nervous about my relevance in a new cause, I invited Robert to join me backstage at the Hollywood Bowl. He arrived with a battered notebook filled with quotes from Rachel Carson and Edward Abbey. He whispered, "Facts inform, but inspiration moves." He pushed me to open with a brief anecdote about my childhood summers hiking with my father, making the science personal. When I stepped on stage and spoke through tears, the audience sat rapt. Then I sang, "Somewhere," as a tribute to vanishing glaciers. The show raised millions and united art with activism in a way I'd never achieved alone. All because Robert had reminded me to tie emotion to purpose. Through each of these milestones, his interventions were deceptively simple: a chair and silence, a wink in the snow, a fax with a favorite quote, a cocktail napkin of schematics, a notebook of wisdom. Each moment unlocked a deeper authenticity I didn't know I possessed. Tonight, at 83, I hold those mementos, script pages, that theater chair, Carson quotes, as relics of a friendship that spelled out courage in everyday gestures. Because in a lifetime of navigating applause, rejection, and reinvention, the most profound applause came from Robert Redford. He was the only one who could do that to me. In the years after our Barbra Online specials and the Hollywood Bowl benefit, I found Robert's influence echoing in every bold choice I made. In 2018, I undertook a deeply personal project recording Walls, an album of songs about isolation, loss, and resilience. I was frightened to expose a more fragile side of my voice. One afternoon, mid-recording at my Malibu studio, I received a text from Robert. "Courage is a melody. You must dare its first note." That simple phrase freed me to lay bare my whisper, my crackle, my uncertainty. On the first take of Silent Room, I felt his steady gaze at my shoulder, urging me forward. The final album was hailed as my most intimate work, and listeners wrote to say it moved them closer to tears than any stage spectacle. I knew then it was Robert's gift, his single-minded belief in vulnerability, that had guided me there. In 2019, I embarked on writing my memoir, a task I'd resisted for decades. The blank pages intimidated me. Then Robert appeared in my mind's eye, handing me a small stack of index cards he once used to plot character arcs. I adopted his method, jotting personal anecdotes, fears, and turning points on individual cards, then rearranging them like puzzle pieces. His lesson structure emerges from honesty, breathed life into my chapters. As I wrote about my turbulent marriage, the birth of my son, and my creative breakthroughs, I drew on the confidence he instilled that truth, once spoken, carries grace. When the memoir hit 21 on bestseller lists, I dedicated it to Robert Redford, the man who showed me that the greatest story is the one you almost fear telling. That same year, I returned to live performance with a one-woman show in New York's Carnegie Hall. The prospect of standing alone on that stage terrified me more than any film role. When I rehearsed in the empty hall, I sensed Robert's calm presence behind the curtain. He taught me that silence before the first line is sacred. On opening night, I paused at the mic for 5 profound seconds, letting shouts and chatter fade. Then, I began, not with song but with a sincere greeting. "Good evening. Tonight, I speak to you not as a star, but as a woman hoping to connect." The audience fell silent. The rest of the show unfolded in emotional clarity and warmth, earning a standing ovation that felt as much for Robert's invisible guidance as for my own performance. In 2020, the world shifted beneath our feet during the pandemic. Isolated in my home studio, I worried how to reach fans craving comfort. I thought of Robert's willingness to pivot at Sundance when circumstances changed. Inspired by his adaptability, I launched Streisand Sessions Live, streaming intimate concerts directly from my living room. I rehearsed each set as if Robert were beside me, reminding me that intimacy must be earned, not manufactured. Viewers tuned in from every continent, writing that the sessions brought solace during uncertain times. In the interplay of song and chat, I felt Robert's ethos. Art's true power lies in its ability to bridge distance and despair. In 2021, I partnered with the Sundance Institute for a grants program supporting women filmmakers of diverse backgrounds. I followed Robert's blueprint, mentorship plus resources, by co-hosting workshops where aspiring directors screened their first short films and received real-time feedback. I watched as participants, formerly fearful of their voices, found courage in constructive critique. Their gratitude reminded me that Robert's legacy lives on in every artist emboldened to tell their story, granting me purpose beyond my own career. Later that year, I reunited with Robert on camera, virtually, for a special interview to benefit conservation efforts. As we spoke from our homes, I invited him to reflect on the changes he'd witnessed at Sundance and in the world since our collaborations began. He spoke of adaptability, of hope forged from vulnerability, and of the joy of championing new voices. I realized that our friendship had become a model for collaboration across generations and mediums. Our conversation reminded millions that creativity thrives when generosity underlies every exchange. Most recently, in 2022 and 2023, I curated Barbra and Friends, a concert series in Los Angeles that paired me with emerging singers and actors. Each performance opened with a tribute to Robert. I displayed one of his handwritten notes on screen, sometimes a lyric prompt, sometimes a witty encore suggestion. I invited each guest to share how his words moved them. Watching rising stars glow with confidence, I saw Robert spark a light in new hearts. In those moments, I understood that his gift did not belong to me alone. It was an inheritance for every artist brave enough to speak truth. Now, at 83, I guard those handwritten notes, index cards, and stage-left folding chair as sacred relics of our collaboration. I have embraced his lessons to dare the first note, to speak truth amid silence, to adapt fearlessly, and to uplift others with honest critique. His influence shaped my art, empowered my activism, and guided my personal rebirth across decades of change. He was the only one who could do that to me. I confess at last, knowing that every note I sing and every life I touch carries the echo of Robert Redford's unwavering faith in the power of authenticity. In these twilight years, I carry Robert's legacy with deliberate intention, weaving his lessons into every new endeavor. Last spring, I visited the Barnard College archives, where a collection of my early recordings now stands beside Robert's Oscar statuette. I was invited to speak to students about the art of collaboration. I shared with them that every enduring work I've created carries a whisper of Robert's voice. His insistence that authenticity is the spark that ignites audience hearts. As I traced my fingers along the spines of shelved tapes and scripts, I felt a surge of gratitude that a chance friendship so many decades ago would ripple outward, shaping not only my life but the creative paths of those eager to follow. Later that day, I returned to my Malibu home and organized a small festival on my lawn, a gathering of musicians, filmmakers, painters, and writers. I titled it Truth in Echoes, and each performer dedicated a piece to Robert Redford's memory. When a young jazz quartet played a moody riff inspired by the rhythms of Point Break, I smiled at how his influence now pulses through styles and generations. I offered a brief toast to Robert, who taught us to break open, to feel deeply, and to share that vulnerability without apology. Under string lights and swaying palms, I saw that his spark still lights creative fires beyond the silver screen, proving that one devoted advocate can launch countless voices into the world. In quieter moments, I delve into the notebooks and letters he left behind, transcribing fragments of his handwritten drafts into my own journal. I've digitized his admonitions, trust the silence, speak your truth, and inserted them as reminders on my phone's lock screen. Before every rehearsal or recording session, I pause to read one aloud, letting the words settle in my bones. That ritual centers me, like a conductor's baton marking the downbeat before an orchestra begins. Even now, Robert's hand guides my own toward honesty in every performance, just as he once nudged me on cold studio floors and blazing stadium stages. I've also extended his philosophy into my family life. When my granddaughter Clara turned 6, she confessed that she felt too shy to sing at her school recital. Remembering Robert's mentorship, I took her by the hand and taught her the simple grounding exercise he'd shown me on a Hawaiian beach. Stand barefoot, feel the earth beneath, and whisper your song into the air as if in a secret conversation. On the day of her recital, she stepped onto the stage, toes gripping the wooden floor, and sang, Somewhere, with a clarity that surprised even her teacher. When she returned to me beaming, I realized that Robert's gift, his unwavering faith, has become a living inheritance in my own family, empowering new generations to find their voices. As I prepare to celebrate my 84th birthday, I find myself reflecting on a career that spans more than 6 decades. I recall the nights I trembled before opening doors, wondering whether I had the courage to stand alone under a spotlight. Time and again, Robert Redford was there in spirit, his ghostly hand on my shoulder urging me to press forward. His quiet challenge became my North Star, guiding me through every creative storm. And though he is no longer here to whisper take or to offer that single word of reassurance, his ethos endures. Every lyric I sing, every frame I direct, every life I mentor bears the imprint of his generosity and of the singular bond we shared. So tonight, as the Pacific wind rustles through my curtains and the last glow of sunset fades into twilight, I set aside my script and my microphone and raise a silent salute to Robert Redford. He was the only one who could do that to me. I whisper into the hush, and in that unspoken vow, I promise, I will continue to honor his memory by living with open heart, by embracing risk, and by championing truth in every act of creation. Because the greatest gift one artist can give another is the permission to be wholly, unapologetically themselves, and for that, Robert will forever be my hero, my guide, and the only one who could truly break me open.